in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What was behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Ish Done. Wednesday nights, Wednesday evenings with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Getting Ish Done. And before we get right into this, how's it going, Dr. Thunder? How is it going?
I'm all right. Last day of classes. And then finals week starts on Friday. And then I'll be done for the semester.
Got it. Finally get that holiday time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you come in, you know what to do. You know what to do. If you have not clicked that like button yet, go ahead and click it. X out of the chat, click the like button, and you can come back in the chat. All right. Is that right, Lil Rock and Wallace in the building? Click that like button, share the stream, share in your WhatsApp group, share if you have a YouTube channel, share on your Instagram DMs and all that good stuff. And then we're going to get into a very important topic. It is about teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. You hear about behind every successful man, there is blah, blah, blah. It's also true behind every successful company, behind every Elon Musk, behind every Steve Jobs, there is a team, the often hidden part, the often hidden gem, something that Steve Jobs alluded to many times, talking about the team. While his particular skill was quite successful because his skill was actually about putting pressure on a team, finding the right team, the kind of people that can take the pressure, those people that can be hardened and become diamonds when they're put under pressure, if you will. And that is what we're going to be discussing today, how to build a dream team. Shout out to Valuetainment, Patrick, Bet, David. Let's go.
So the definition of genius is when somebody can take something very complex and make it seem so easy and simple, where everybody says, I cannot believe how this guy or this girl does what they do. And the reason why they're able to do what they do is because they're very good at building a dream team that sometimes you don't get to see, okay? So depending on your vision and how big of a vision you have in your life, you need to learn how to put a dream team together. Anybody that ever did it in business and sports and Hollywood, anybody that did anything at the high scale, they know how to put a dream team together. I got 14 points I want to cover with you. But before getting into the 14 points, there's one thing I want to address that I look at right off the bat before I even think about putting a dream team together. So here's the first things. As you're hiring people, as you're recruiting people, as you're putting people around the team to do something big for yourself, you need to know almost everybody you recruit or you hire falls under one of four categories. They're either doubters, which is the lowest level. These are people that doubt everything. You may say, guys, we want to go out there and build a company that's going to do X, Y, Z. Hey, we're going to go build a agency that's going to do such and such. And you cast your vision. When you cast your vision, there's going to be a few different ways people respond. One of them is what? There's no way in the world we can do this. I like it. I like what we're saying, but there's no way in the world this can get done, right? That's a doubter. The doubter doubts everything. The second was a non-believer. They're not negative. They just don't believe because they're pessimistic. It's like, I don't know if we can. It's going to be hard. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's a little higher level than a doubter, but it's still a non-believer. Then you have the believer, somebody that believes that we can actually do this. Then you have the highest level, the true believer. By the way, the true believer, you don't just recruit somebody right off the bat and they become a true believer. You typically recruit and invite somebody to your company and your business and your vision because they say, I kind of believe what this guy has to say. So they're believers, and then you start figuring out if this person can be a true believer or if they're just going to stay as a believer. But I can say one thing for a fact. These two, they're not people you can build a dream team around. You need these two to build a dream team around. So that's the first thing to be thinking about. So now, having said that, let's go into point.
Yes. I'm just gonna make a quick comment there. He just highlighted the believer, non-believer kind of spectrum, and it is something to pay attention to as someone who's starting out the team, or someone who is doing the recruiting, someone whom already perhaps has the dream or the goal upon them that will require a team. Sometimes this believer thing is not something you consider because you're probably already a believer in the particular goal, and you're probably like a believer type of somebody whom takes calculated risks, whom understands the nature of putting the chips out there on the table. So for you, it's like the air that you breathe. So you don't really see the importance of checking this believer, non-believer spectrum. But it is quite important to from the other person's perspective, right? And even you might be like a mercenary type. So it doesn't really matter. You can join a team and do work for the team without necessarily having to think about how much you quote unquote believe. But the mercenary types are few and far between. So most people have to where they fall in the believe spectrum affects their performance and what we will typically call loyalty and such, right? But the believer, non-believer spectrum is something he just laid out on the table. And I think it's sometimes often hidden. And especially with someone like me, it's like a blind spot. I usually don't consider whether somebody quote unquote believes, because it's just not the kind of language that I use and such. I don't know, any comments on the believer to non-believer spectrum that he mentioned?
Yeah. Isn't this just optimist, realist, pessimist? Isn't that sort of what it is that he's talking about? And I do think it's important to know what kind of people you have, and perhaps a pessimist or pessimistic person isn't probably ideal for a startup. I think realists are good because they can tell you what you actually have, and if you actually need to accomplish certain things or need to handle certain logistics to be able to get to the next level, you need people that are going to tell you the truth about what it is that the challenges are, without crapping all over the dream, or whatever. They're there. They I suppose they believe in what it is that you're doing, but they're also going to tell you, look, there's you see the iceberg right there. We're going to run right into that, and let's see here. Something else he was saying about, let's see here. Well, it'll probably come back to me.
Okay. Just in case, he mentioned the backdrop of, the team being behind the person, the aspect that you don't see. And then he mentioned, obviously, the non-believer, whom is somebody you need to stay away from, right? And then he mentioned these, the top two tiers being believer and the true believer and all that kind of stuff. But anyways.
Yeah, so it seemed to me the true believer is the optimist.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to see everything as plus regardless. Then the believer, that seems to be maybe more of the realist category. And then the pessimist is the one that is the doubter,
mm-hmm.
I guess. And maybe they're not cleanly related. Maybe clearly related to what he's saying, but it seems that is it. This mercenary thing that you were talking about. These days, I prefer to just be a mercenary. Because a mercenary doesn't have to believe in any of the crap. A mercenary can be objective oriented. Here's a job. This is what I need you to do. I heard that you're the best person to do this, and you can make a deadline. And then you get in there, you get your check, and you go somewhere else. You don't have to deal with office politics. You don't have to deal with, any of the tribalistic crap. You don't have to deal with any of that stuff, right? Yeah, but obviously that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about building a team. And so obviously all of those dynamics are things that you have to be concerned about. You have to understand, how that stuff is going to be a plus or a minus to your objective, and so having the right kind of people around, recognizing certain skills and assets that they have, and certainly if they're going to be crapping all over your dreams, that probably aren't the ones that you want around. So, yeah.
Do that.
Point number one. No matter what you do, the key is to always recruit and hire opposing strengths of what you're doing. So, for instance, I think a lot of times opposing strength, we only think about a skill set, but I think it's really two different things about opposing strengths. One is skill set. The other one is personality. So if you think about skill set, you could be doing a company that somebody needs to learn coding, accounting, compliance, legal, sales, all this other stuff, right? And that's great. That's skill. But you also need different personalities to put a dream team together, because there's got to be a complementing of each other on the personalities. Personalities, you're dealing with 4 personalities. S is structure, T is technical, A is action, R is relationship. I've done a video on this. The 4 personality types that have a whole, I think 20-page PDF you can download. Why don't we put a link of it somewhere here that they can see it, Luis, with the whole thumbnail of the video. We'll put the link on the bottom as well for you to see it. So 4 personality types. Structure is somebody that you have in your company that everything is organized. It's always on time. Everything is solid. You go into their desk, it's fully organized. The technical guys, they think about, well, what if this takes place? What if that happens? What if this happens? What if this? Well, the expenses would be this much. And what if these guys come through? And what if we can strategize a technical? They're thinking a completely different way. Then it's action. Someone that's just like, we need to do this. Let me give a call right now. Let me go meet with them right now. I'm going to go on a flight right now. I'm going to go set up a time with them right now. Let me get to work, see what I can do. Let me make a few phone calls. That's the action type. These 2 guys aren't necessarily the action types. This is, and the 4th one is relationship. That's the person that says, hey, John, how you doing, man? How's everything? How's the family? Guys, let's work as a team. Let's come together. It's a synergist. You feel when you're around a relationship type of a person on a team. Every team needs an R. Typically, they're not considered as some people say, oh my gosh, we just need to get to work. But when tough times come on a team, in a business, that's going to happen. They definitely keep everybody together. So you need a little bit of everything. So just think about what you are and go recruit your opposing skills and your opposing personality that you're not. Number 2.
All right. So opposing skill, that one makes perfect sense. Everybody knows the skills that are required and the skills that are lacking, and then you fill in those gaps. The personality thing, very, very important as well. And I would suggest that ladies and gentlemen, go check out it must have been a 4-part series on the Myers-Briggs personality types too. And you have to know that how to balance introversion versus extroversion, thinker versus feeler, judger versus perceiver. And is this person more of an intuitive type or a sensor type? And he has put some categories here on the table which correlate loosely with the kinds of the cognitive functions which are part of the Myers-Briggs system. For example, the relationship person, that's a FE person, that's an extroverted feeling person. Okay. And typically,
you don't need that one. You just need the first 3. You don't need that R one.
Typically, this person, if they're well balanced with other skills, they can be quite good managers of people, right? If they have enough of that caring, but with enough of the hard edge and are actually also performance based, then you can go very far with that. And then the action person, that extroverted sensing type that takes action. And you have like the 2 types of thinkers. One is an extroverted thinker, the organized kind of sort of person, and then you have the introverted thinker, very logical type and whatnot. But definitely balancing the personalities is key, not just balancing skills. Any thoughts there, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah, I still think we don't need R. No, I'm teasing. Obviously, because of what my personality type is, I'm naturally sort of irritated by too much of that. Here, let me give you a hug. How is your family doing? Oh, I heard Nancy just got a new job. So, I don't know. Do you do you actually care about that stuff, or you just you know you just can't help yourself but to just be. Look, I'm not even. Does it matter what my wife's name is? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I talk about my wife. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but there's just stuff that has nothing to do with the job that I don't really need you to be nosing around. Just stay away from me. Do that with those people over there. You know, when you need something done, come over here. And then when you just want to socialize and stuff and ask people about their vacation and stuff like that, go over there on that side over there with those other folks. I don't know. I know that's kind of harsh, but that just sometimes those folks, it's very irritating. And then if you combine that with certain environments like churches and stuff, some certain folks are trying to give you hugs and stuff all the time, and and it's like, oh, dude, I don't need that. Matter of fact, I don't want that. Just, I don't know.
So
Sorry.
to add to there is a point that you're making, which is actually quite it's quite important. So this extroverted feeling we're talking about, that's what we're talking about here. And again, check out our series on the Myers-Briggs personality type. This extroverted feeling, like every other function, is something that can be a tool, or it's something that you can embody, right? So when we went through the different function, the personality types, if extroverted feeling is your first function, then you embody that thing. There are other types too, or other positions it could be in where you also embody it. But there's a difference between embodying extroverted feeling versus being somebody that can use extroverted feeling as a good tool. Extroverted feeling as a good tool is going to be needed for any type of sales, persuasion, relationship maintenance type function. Okay. But you don't necessarily need somebody that completely embodies it. So a lot of times, people whom embody extroverted feeling are not necessarily the best at using extroverted feeling. As somebody who does not embody it, for example, I do notice that the types who embody it have very messy, a lot of times, messy extroverted feeling type interactions and relationships. They don't really know how to maintain relationships, useful relationships over time. They don't really know how to deal with other people, give them what they want, make them feel important, and all those other types of things that you would need to do so that they know, like, and trust you, so that then, business can continue. So I 100% agree with you that what you're looking for is the tool of extroverted feeling, the tool of relationship building, and not necessarily somebody that just embodies it. Because that embodiment of it, if this distinction is clear here between embodiment versus using as a tool, that person is just living from that center. Okay, it's not necessarily a strategic use of this tool. They literally just want to hug you, as opposed to somebody whom gives a strategic hug, if that makes sense, Dr. Thunder, right? The person who I would say that of a higher level, and this is a personality bias again on my side, a higher level and more useful will be the person who knows when to give that strategic hug for a strategic reason, as opposed to the person who just can't help but give hugs to everyone all the time and say stuff, because that tends to end up being messy. I don't know if that makes sense, Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and of course, I understand the importance of a well placed concerned question about how are things going at home, or some encouragement here and there, or recognizing certain issues that maybe somebody's having, and how to sort of have a conversation that's a productive conversation about that. So I understand how to do that, and that's important. Yes, my issue is more with these sort of sloppy folks that just can't help themselves, and it's like, you're not even doing this because it's actually needed. You're doing this because you can't control yourself, and that's too much.
Indeed. And we're going to get to number 2. Watch who responds to visions versus money. This one should be interesting. One last point here on this strategic hug, if you will. So it's the holiday season. I'm going to be sending out gift baskets and chocolates and things like that to certain people. Okay, certain clients.
I'll put my address in the back check.
To certain people, and mainly clients. And they're going to have a feeling when they receive it. I know that this is not just kind of. I know that what this is the extroverted feeling play that I'm making, right? But I know that it's important. While I do not embody extroverted feeling at all, it is a blind spot of mine that yeah. But I know to do these types of things. It's important. It needs to happen. You have to have these hooks in there and whatnot. Shout out to One Man Went to Mo, the first super chat of the day. Shout out to Trick or Treat, he says. Trick or treat. Okay. Watch who responds to vision versus money. This one is an interesting one. There are many ways in which you could divide and dissect. In many ways, many recent experiences that I've had regarding this thing. The mercenary type that you described earlier, Dr. Thunder, I had alluded to also prior to you describing them, that it is a rare type. Typically, a mercenary can be focused on money, and that's not a problem at all, right? Some people, if they can't see the vision, then the money might be a problem for them at the moment, or they might be looking at things such as a position or prestige or things like that. They need to I've dealt with people that I hire, and then they things fall through because they didn't necessarily understand the importance from starting from the bottom, right? Starting from the bottom, learning things. So we're talking about typically younger people, just graduated college, right? They're looking to go work at Lockheed Martin or something, and they don't understand the ropes, right? So if you're working for Prometheus Engineering, you're like, this is not Lockheed Martin. It's not very important, and they lose that motivation. Things fall through. I've seen people like this get in this kind of a situation and then have to come back after they realize, oh crap, the things that I was learning there were very important. And as a matter of fact, even if I were able to land a job at Lockheed Martin, I may not even be able to get these skills. I may get pigeonholed in some kind of a place where I'm pushing paper and on and on and on and on. The typical kind of mistake that people make. But let's see what he's going to say about watch who responds to vision versus money.
Watch who responds to the vision and who responds to the money. Let me elaborate. So when I started a business, and every time since I was a young kid, I would always be casting a vision of what we could do. What if we can collect 10,000 beer bottles here and we can get a Super Nintendo, we can do this. And oh my gosh, that would be great. And oh, come on. And I was in Madrid, and the girl I stayed with at the refugee camp, she says, I remember you put all of us to work, and we were all collecting beer bottles, and we had this vision that we were going to be the only ones at refugee camp to have a Super Nintendo. And then boom, they bought into that we're going to spend time and have some fun. They bought into a vision, right? So you cast the vision over and over and over. I can tell you, if you ask any of my employees or staff or sales or partners or vendors or anybody, if they've worked with me for more than 5 years, you ask them, how many times has Pat casted a vision of where the company is going? They would probably tell you, I don't know, the people closest to me would tell you a couple thousand times. I'm always casting, because I'm simply watching on who's buying into the vision. Always. I'm always casting to see who's buying into the vision. And I'm always casting to see what the person's going to say, how much money I'm going to make. If it's money first, I know exactly where their position is going to be. It's like a guy playing in the league that just wants to take contracts to get money. He could care less about a ring. And we're the Yankees, we're the Lakers, we're the Celtics. If we don't win a championship, listen, man, it's a disappointing year. Not even if we make it to the playoffs, right? So you got to know that part on who you're drawing in and studying everybody and how they respond to you selling the vision. Number 3, hire 2 at a time.
Yeah. So any thoughts, Dr. Thunder? He did mention the dichotomy or the spectrum, but without necessarily saying what he making any judgments on it. He didn't necessarily say, I mean, we can imply that the person who is just looking for money is being judged in one way, in a particular way, as opposed to a person who really does buy the vision. But he didn't necessarily go into the operationalizing of it, such as I had done with giving examples of there's some people whom actually need to have this vision. Otherwise, they will not see where perhaps the money is going to come from. Or there's some people whom don't understand the importance of gaining experience in a particular thing, or some people don't understand that, hey, this could be a thing that I do here on the side, and then I'm going to go get a job at Lockheed Martin as well, and this is actually going to be better for my overall career, blah blah blah. This type of uh, uh, adding the time complexity factor to money, right? Which is what the whole vision thing is about. Because I'm sure if they're buying into the vision, they part of the vision that they see in the future is bigger money. But he did not operationalize it too much. What are your thoughts on this vision versus money thing that he has said so far, and comment on perhaps anything that I've said?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need the vision. I'm realizing this more and more as as I am, know thyself, and in that sort of constant process of discovery, self-discovery and everything. I think when I was younger, I think I tried to psych myself up into, believing a vision because I wanted to feel like I belonged to a particular tribe. Um, and and I didn't realize that actually that's not really what I wanted. That's just what seemed to be the thing or whatever. And you kind of experiment and try things and just and you figure things out about yourself. Um, I've realized that I don't really need an external vision. Um, I have my own vision for what it is I'm trying to do, and I'm using all of the various interactions in jobs and you know different places that I've worked, and even my position in the academy and everything else. I'm using all of that stuff to get to my personal vision, and so but a lot of that's not, but I realize that's not what most people are like. I realize that the vision of their particular job, their employer or whatever it is, I think that's, really critically important for them. And I also think that, I think for some people, family could be that vision. It could be like, well, I hate my job. My boss is a nut job, whatever, but the job pays really well. And so I can endure this for the sake of being able to provide for my family, and be able to do certain kinds of things and spend the kind of time I want to spend with my kids and like that. So their family is really that sort of vision that allows them to be able to deal with a bunch of BS. But me, I mean, yeah, my family's part of, my motivation to be able to provide for my family. That's certainly there. But I have before I was doing any of this other stuff, I was a musician, right? I was a freelance musician. And so getting back to being able to play my music, do it my way, that's the thing, yeah. And having a platform like I do, being able to express and talk about stuff that's important to me, that really overrides and is much, much more important to me than having a sort of buy into whatever, you know, rah stuff going on at the job. I don't give a crap about that. You guys can care about that, but that doesn't put any money in my pocket. So I'm sorry. I just that's kind of where I've gotten with that. I don't give a crap about that stuff. You guys can be excited, but that stuff does not pay out, and I'm not going to play that game.
Yes, sir. So in my hirings, generally speaking, because what we're describing here is going to be more of somebody that's on the thinker side of things, where okay, they're going to be thinking through their priorities. They have a hierarchy of values already coming in, and when they engage with you as trying to form a team or something, they're going to be thinking about their priorities. Either it's more of a self-centered, not in a negative way, type of. They have their particular needs and things they need to. For example, you mentioned expressing yourself, being able to play your music, all those kinds of things, and they're going to think, okay, how does this opportunity dovetail with this? So, and this is the type of person typically that I would attract within my organization, and money is a good kind of mediator for that relationship. In other words, here's how much money, here's what it'll take to get that money, here's the kind of things that we do here. Does it fit into your scheme, right? That's easy, right? If you find these types of people, that's great. But every once in a while, you're gonna need a feeler in there because most people actually are feelers as opposed to thinkers. So, and with those feelers, you're gonna need to kind of cast a vision for them, and such, right?
We need a
Uh,
feeler purge.
Shout out to gonna do a feeler eugenics. Shout out to feeler eugenics out there. But yes, and shout out to Wallace. Wallace is talking about the strategic use of extroverted feeling, the strategic use of relationship building, the strategic use of that hug, that gift, as opposed to the more chaotic embodiment of that thing, which leads to all kinds of side alley battles, conversations, or what is typically called politics, right? All that side politics because somebody is simply embodying extroverted feeling rather than using it is I would agree with you, is often quite unnecessary. So hire two at a time, he says. Interesting. Now this is is something that I've kind of inadvertently done before. I wonder where he's going with it, but one of the obvious perhaps places that this could go is, you want to test people out. You want to be able to chop one off at some point, or maybe you find the two of them are gold mines, and it works out great. But let's see.
On who you're drawing in and studying everybody and how they respond to you selling the vision. Number 3, hire 2 at a time. I like to hire 2 at a time. Why do I hire 2 at a time? I hire 2 accountants at a time. Okay. I hire 2 assistants at a time. Everything I hire 2 at a time. And within 90 days, one of 2 things happens. Within 90 days, either one realizes the other is better and this one leaves, or the second thing that happens, they both make so much value to the company or the brand or whatever I'm doing that they make the money back based on the effort they're putting. I keep both of them. But I like to hire 2 at a time. When you're building a dream team, you can't just have one option. If you only have one option, then you're putting all your chips just on this one person. If this fails, you don't have another thing to go. Like, there's got to be a injured reserve. You got some people that can come off the bench that can do the work, and you're really looking to see who wants it more than the other person does. And you're always watching everybody like a hawk. Okay, so you hire 2 at a time. Number 4, don't settle. I remember I hired one time a guy who was an executive in the industry, had a very, very solid reputation. His resume was insane of a resume. All he ever talked about was money. He never bought into the vision, okay? And I tried to make it work so many times myself. It was my mistake, not his mistake. It's 100% my mistake. Because I thought having somebody from the industry with a nice credibility in the background, whether he believes in it or not, is something I should just have because of his resume. Absolute flop. Didn't work, okay? It didn't work. I tried to force that to work. Once that happened, I went to point number 5, which is exactly the opposite of work.
Yeah, so went through 2 points there. Number 1 being to hire 2 people at a time. And then he made a kind of a point which he did not point out necessarily well. He just called it don't settle. But then really it's a point about personality type. Let me say a bit about that don't settle thing, where he's trying to bring in a person that has the credentials and trying to bring him into something new with a vision. Typically, these are opposing types here. You're trying to mix oil and water. The type of person whom has all these credentials and is an industry person and so on and so forth is typically, okay, I'm not saying that a barbarian can't have credentials, is typically a very much a non-barbarian, scout, non-seeker, non-risk taker, and they're just looking for a train track. They're looking typically for safety. These credentials, after all, give you safety. They put you on a track. You start at point A and you get to point B. And if you pay the ticket at point B, then you get to point C. And if you pay the certificate and do this and kiss the right asses at point C, hey, then maybe we'll get you to point D, and so on and so forth. That's the typical type of MBA, especially when you mention MBA. Okay, now MBAs are typically just idiots, extroverted, groupthink idiots, right? For the most part, they don't really have any original thought in their head. They're out there studying case studies of old stuff that, I mean, it's just the type of person that even goes into that thing. Typically, it's not the kind of person you're trying to bring into some kind of a new thing. Okay. New thing, typically, well, you're looking for intuitives. Okay. And intuitives tend not to fit very much in tracks because they're not really about tracks. They're about the possibilities. They're about the landscape of possible ideas and how things change. Intuitives are way more comfortable with change, generally speaking, and so on. So the point prior, which is point number 4, talking about don't settle, that really was a point about understanding personality types. Is this person shall I use the term visionary, or I said barbarian, more intuitive, more into the risk taking, or they a strictly track person? Again, an intuitive can have all the track record and the credentials, but you need to be able to tease out those two. Some MBA credentialed person is going to be a headache to you if you're trying to bring them into something new. Dr. Thunder, any thoughts on this, or the hire 2 at a time, or anything else that has been said so far?
Yeah, the hiring at two at a time is interesting because do you know what he's trying to create is competition, right? He didn't say that, but that's what he's trying to create is competition. So the two people that they both thrive is because they're competing against each other. The one person that survives while the other one quits, it's because that the surviving one, they won, as it were. That's the competition. Now, I don't know if you know you probably do, aware of the strategy that was used to expedite the building of the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, and
the original one, right?
The original one,
yeah.
Where they hired 2 separate firms to build, and they were both building and at the same time, and you're trying to make a name for yourself, and so you see the other guy, the other building going up a little bit faster, and then you're like, you're cracking the whip and stuff on your side because this kind of a thing. And so because of that competition, it took much less time than it would have to get both of those buildings built, because they hired 2. They hired 2 separate firms. So anyhow, yeah.
Good point there. Good point.
Same thing as number 4, constantly raise your standards. One day, when I'm working with this guy, I get off the phone. I say, how many more flipping times do I need to have a conversation with this guy about this? I feel like I have to save this guy every day from keeping a positive attitude. He was just losing his cool with everybody, all this other stuff. I said, you know what, Pat? Stop it. What are your standards? Grab a sheet of paper, and I started writing it. Who do you want to be in this position with what attitude and what skill set and what effort? I wrote it down. Does he meet it? No. Stop settling standard. Boom. Have a conversation with him. Fired, gone. We raised it. We moved on. Position was fired. We took a 60-day hit. We moved on. We found somebody. We're doing good. Everything was great because I chose to raise the standards. I think sometimes, if you remember, I'm not saying how to build a team, how to build a dream team, not a team. If you're trying to build a dream team, you must constantly raise the standard. And every single time you raise the standard, remember, I did this video the other day. Every single time you raise the standard in your family, in your business life, in anything, in any team, you're going to have some people that are not going to be happy about it. So constantly raise your standard. Enough people will rise up. And by the way, 7 out of 10 cases, you will be surprised on who rises up to the occasion of the new standards versus who backs down. Sometimes the most talented guy says, ooh, this is too much pressure. I've been able to get away with my whole talent this entire time. This is actually legitimate standard. And I don't know if I can hang on against the other guy. Let me bail. And they either bail or they realize they're not the chief. There's somebody new that's going to be leading them, and that position takes place, and it's obvious to everybody. But regardless, this helps you get over here. Okay, now point number 6.
So this is a good thing in general about sometimes, especially if you're a vision type of leader that, you want to bring everyone along and you want to perhaps micromanage, will be the derogatory way of in which this can manifest itself. But there's the idea of wanting to coach, over push, over have too many conversations, as he just mentioned. Like, I'm going to have a conversation with this guy every week about his attitude or about his this or about his that. Could be the quality of work. Don't force it. Don't try to force out the diamond out of this person because they just might not be that person. Hire slowly and fire quickly. Okay. You want to get you just you want the person to burn out naturally, or they can't meet the standards and it's obvious they can't meet the standards, and you let them go, and it's gonna be obvious to them and you and everyone around. But stop beating your head against the wall trying to pull everyone along, and oh, because you see something in this person, you see the spark in your eye, they remind you of something in you, blah blah blah. But it's like, hey, maybe it's time to let them go, because I'm sure you probably messed up at some point and maybe somebody let you go, and that was part of your learning process, right? So if this guy reminds you of you when you were a kid at college, well, then maybe maybe you need to fail him. Maybe you need, like, maybe you did poorly in one class in your, and that turned you around. Same thing needs to happen here. Don't force people into fitting into the standard. Just keep the standard. If they can't make it, they can't make it. Either they will leave or they will fall into a particular place where they're not the top performer anymore. Actually, this dovetails also with the competition story from a personal anecdotal story where I had a team. It was specifically 3 people this time, and when it was 3 people and all 3 of them are going through the training, there was competition, and one of the people really stood out because they liked to compete, I guess, right? And I found that so the 2 of them slipped through, 2 of them fell through, and this one remained. But actually, the performance of this one that remained actually started to dwindle down because of the lack of competition. It would seem, right? But anyways, any thoughts?
Are you making the case for polygyny?
Hey, shout out to the Muslim sisters out there making videos about. It's like, if I see any good Muslim woman out there, I ask, I introduce them to my husband.
Yeah, because they like competition.
Yeah, yeah.
Keeps them sharp. Keeps them sharp.
There you go. There you go. All right. Values and principles, ladies and gentlemen. So we are talking about building that dream team. The hidden part of organizations and the hidden part of successful people is the fact that they have a team. Even someone like myself or someone like Dr. Thunder, whom might not necessarily emphasize this aspect, we're well aware that it takes good people to get things done, and good people are not a dime a dozen. They're difficult to find. So how do you find these people? How do you integrate them into your company? And how do you move on? Some things have been mentioned, such as balancing personalities and balancing skills. You have to understand that it's not just a question of skill, but there's a question of personality as well. And then you have to look at what is motivating these people, create competition, do not back down, raise the standards, so on. And now we're going to talk about values and principles.
Values and principles. You're building a dream team. You constantly have to talk about values and principles. What am I talking about with values and principles? Hard work. Take care of your health. Treat people right. Say please, thank you. Request. What are your thoughts on this? Certain values and principles. Your team. Stealing, cheating, lying, not being afraid of telling the truth. Character. These things. I had a sheet of 41 points that I trained on every 90 days for 10 years. Every 90 days, these 41 points were trained every 90 days. Why? Values and principles is the backbone of a dream team, period. Because everybody starts saying, hey, that's not how we do things here. No, that's not how we do things here. That's not how we do things here. I no longer need to talk about values and principles because it's now in everybody's blood. Everybody has it now. We're building a dream team based on the right values and principles. Number 7, don't compromise.
Repeating and retraining and stuff. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Thunder? Obviously, you would one would prefer, at least I would prefer, if you show the standard one time, and then the people take on that standard and actually embody the principle of improvement. Okay. And it's like the perfect employee or the perfect team person whom you don't even, first they have the basic standard, and then you notice that they improve upon the standard. It might be their email writing or whatever the output of work that you're supposed to put out. It could be a drawing, a write-up, a paper or whatever, and it keeps getting better, right? The way they format the thing is getting better. The way they arrange the text is getting better. You found out they downloaded some new software. Now they're using ChatGPT to incorporate certain whatever it is. And you did not bring this up as a new standard in the company, but they just start doing it themselves. Now that is the best, especially for certain types like me that don't want to keep on hammering both vision and training all the time. But that is less than 1 out of 10. That's less than 10% based on my experience. You're not gonna really get that. So you definitely have to kind of retrain and motivate, perhaps in a quarterly basis or and things like that. Add things like bonuses, right, to help the team keep going. But any thoughts, Dr. Thunder? But first of all, let me perhaps I can read what Dusty Wallace is saying here. Intuitives are more open-minded as they are more attuned to abstract thinking, right? And adaptation. Yeah, that's kind of like their realm. They're not necessarily out here just for the fixed thing per se. And they're going to be more open to change and whatnot. And by the way, just as a side note, before you make any comments there, Dr. Thunder, Silicon Valley, for example, is filled with intuitives, most likely probably intuitive thinkers. And these people are okay with change. And then they push technology and technology changes things. This type of change tends to upset the apple cart when it comes to the social order. In one obvious way, it changes the distribution of money, right? The victor goes the spoils. A lot of the money goes, let's say, to Silicon Valley after they produce some new tool, some new site, some new means of doing things, some new AI or whatever. And however, though, most of society, not intuitives, don't like change, and this upsets them, especially when things like this happen, when there's an upset in the social order. And this is something that perhaps just a side note for intuitives to take note of, that your appetite for change and living in the abstract world where you can move these symbols or concepts from one spot to the other, and it doesn't quite make much of a difference to you. You just adapt, is not the way of the world. And most of the upset that we see as the world continues to accelerate in technological change, you're going to see an acceleration of political upheaval and turmoil, right? And understanding why this happens is basically most of the world is not geared up for this type of change, and they're not okay with this type of Silicon Valley egghead intuitive, let's change the world type of idea. But go ahead, Dr. Thunder. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So this is so you started by saying you don't really want to have to keep sort of cultivating the kind of people embracing the value system and the standard and coming up to the standard and developing new standards, and there are folks that they sort of just do that themselves, and that's very few folks. And now one thing I've noticed is I think if you figure out how to support the sort of creativity and skill set of your employees, I think you'd find more of them actually creating new standards, because they would believe that they actually have. I don't like using the empowerment word. I'm sorry, because it's sort of been kind of tainted. But if you empower the people to sort of be able to make adjustments, and they have enough leeway to be able to make certain kinds of decisions in certain ways, and you're not micromanaging, but you're sort of facilitating. I think people within whatever their knack is will be very good at making new standards and bringing things up to whatever the next level is. I think that often it's the case that the position that they're in stifles that and teaches them not to do that. It teaches them rather to basically find whatever the lowest common denominator is and just stay just a little bit above that, and they'll be okay. I think people are taught to, um, you know, lower their standards, as it were, in that sense. Um, and it's tough because it's not a vacuum. Everything is affecting everything else, and people come from other jobs and where they've likely had certain kinds of experiences, and and so you know, uh, so you're still end up being stuck with having to sort of reassert whatever the standard is, and um, but I happen to think that people. I'm a good judge of ability. Like, I know when someone can do something really well. And so what I have done is I've just tried to facilitate. I've said, okay, well, how can I get out of their way, support whatever that they're saying, say yes to most everything that they're saying, and then they feel like they have ownership in what's happening, and then they're free to sort of make adjustments to the system that improve it, So just a perspective on that.
Yes, perspective, and a very good one indeed. There are a few companies out there that have really nailed this idea down. The idea of ownership, typically measured through performance based type work. The easiest of which is sales, right? Where you let them loose. You give them computers and the CRM system and the book of business and their shirts and their phones and their cars or whatever else you're providing for them, and you give them a territory. How they build that territory up, how they decide to make the business. Are they going to be going after the $20,000 accounts, or are they going to be going after $500,000 businesses? What is their typical cadence? How do they leverage their strength and all these other kinds of things? Do they decide, hey, you know what? I'm not going to use the standard marketing material. I'm going to go make my own marketing material. Allow them to do that. Yeah, throw it on the expense report. Make your own marketing material. Choose whether you're going to go via Zoom or not. Those kinds of things. There are a few companies that have actually really nailed down being able to create a good sales force, a good marketing team, and perhaps a good remote work engineering team based on deliverables, performance based. You own it, and yes, you can
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll tell you, in theory, the academy, the university system, should excel at that, in theory, because you have a lot of autonomy, right? Once you're tenured in the professor owns the curriculum, right? So when the professor leaves, the curriculum leaves with them. They're the ones that developed the intellectual property, right? They built the structure, and they tweaked the structure, improved the structure like that. So this should be the natural domain. What it is that we're talking about should be the natural domain of the academy, but it's not. It's not. There's too many bean counters and too many folks that are so married to what the rules are, what the policies are, that it kills, and it's a tremendous downward force on those that actually are the ones that are responsible for bringing in the students.
Yes. So, and it's a self-selection thing, right? People whom the average person whom decides to go down the academia path is a track kind of person, right? They want a track. They want probably a tenure track. Shout out to tenure, right? So they want this track, but you're pointing out the obvious kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's like an irony that they're after this tenure track, okay? But really, the end point of the tenure track is something that doesn't even really suit their personality. In other words, the freedom that they're supposed to get It doesn't suit their personality. They don't want freedom to begin with. They wanted a track and they want a certain set of rules and such and such. So yes, that is a challenge in academia, for example. It's also has something to do with the self-reinforce, and also it self-reinforces, right? So when you have this preponderance of people whom are of that mind, it's going to attract more people of that mind, and they're going to hire, especially when they're responsible for hiring, more people of that mind, right? And they don't even have to sit down and do a conspiracy about it. They just, the same way in which the ideological proclivities get perpetuated, right? Why is academia so left, right? That kind of a thing, right? These types of things, self-selection, and then it just kind of perpetuates, and you hire people who think like you, and all that. But very good point. Shout out to Andre with the Canadian dollars. Always appreciated. Thank you very much. For some reason I can't read what you said. It says Dusty support.
Yes, some Dusty support.
Dusty support.
Yes.
Mind expansion and knowledge and hustle. Okay, so let us do this. This is number 7. He said he had like 14 things that he was gonna do.
Yeah, 14 things. So I think this is a good halfway point.
Yeah. So don't compromise the big. Always have your non-negotiables. This I don't know what he's about to say, and this will be the last point that we go through, obviously. But this thing about don't compromise the big, and in which my mind immediately went to, there's certain non-negotiables, and a lot of social unrest, differences between groups, is because of a misunderstanding typically of what the non-negotiables are. And getting down to the non-negotiables is not an easy thing, because people put up a front, generally speaking, regarding what exactly it is they're willing to compromise on and not compromise on. It is typical of the sales game, for example, if you're trying to sell something to somebody, that they're not necessarily going to tell you what it is that is going to make them buy or not buy. When they say, "Oh, let's think about it," or "We're going to think about it," are they really thinking about it? No, you don't really think when you make a purchase. That's not really how it goes, unless they have very specific points that you want you to get your information for, so they can fill out this data in their spreadsheet, see if the money makes sense, and then boom, they pull the trigger. So what am I saying here? I'm saying the real reasons behind what people are going to do or not do, which are value based, which seem to be emotional based. It's just a way of thinking about it. Values and emotions and feelings they tend to be in a similar bucket. People will not reveal this to you, but typically, if you can have the kind of relationship where you understand where the person's values are and what they will not compromise, and then what they can compromise, typically you can go through all kinds of stuff together. So don't compromise the big things. Make it clear what these big things are. Having company values and whatnot, which is a typical marketing BS. But there are actually some companies that live up to their values. Some companies, for example, there is a company that I'm thinking that I had in mind when I was talking about developing people in the manner you described, developing them to empower them, to give them ownership, and so on and so forth. And one of their values is courage. In other words, we want our people to have the courage to make mistakes. A lot of people might say that kind of BS, but this company actually follows that. They actually allow the employees to make mistakes, go out there, say the truth, act upon their intuition and things like that. But let's see what he has to say here about the big stuff.
Compromise the big. Sometimes people lower the standards and they settle because they compromise the big. Do not compromise the big. I had a conversation with a husband and wife a couple of days ago, and they were calling me. We had a conversation for 20, 30 minutes, and they were stressed. I said, wait a minute, let me do the math here on what you're really worried about. I said, so you're worried about this number here? Yes. I said, how much money is this from January 1st till today? $1,500. I said, how many weeks have we had from January 1st till today? 18 weeks. What's 1,500 divided by 18 weeks? $80. Are you really trying to tell me you're worried on $80 a week check is what's stressing you out when you got a $20,000 check waiting for you? And I said, stop compromising the big and focus on the big. This is costing you millions by doing that. Okay, sometimes if you truly want to build a dream team, you cannot compromise the big. It's always here, not here. You're focused here. Okay, number 8. Watch.
Good point here. His example here talking about not focusing on the small, I guess, and focusing on the things that, the big thing that is not to be compromised. Um, Shout out to Israel versus Hamas and whatnot. Now that is a particularly thorny problem, perhaps the biggest, thorniest geopolitical issue there. And I would say that in that same case, the same principle could be applied if the non-negotiables of both sides were actually clearly understood by both sides, which is almost impossible to do because people always hide that stuff, right? They're always like, but there is in reality a thing which they're like, this is my one thing that you cannot touch, and then we can talk about everything else on one side, and then the other guy also has the one thing they cannot touch, and we can talk about everything else. But people are typically not that honest or capable of this type of clean division. This is a hyper thinker type of bias that I'm stating here, Dr. Thunder, right? This ability to kind of very cleanly do this incision within yourself to cut out certain things and not have your heartstrings pull you there, or have because I tend to be obsessed with the body mechanics. When people start running off at the mouth, goalpost switching, or behaving badly, generally speaking, when they get in their feelings, it is literally a lack of body control that they have, right? Because we all know what it's like, right? We know that this guy cannot control the blood rushing through him right now, and he cannot control the hormones, and he has the tick on his left leg that gets activated when he gets agitated is now completely controlled him, right? So the thinker bias is, hey, as a thinker, you should be able to cut off your left leg and the blood rushing and the heat in the back of your ear, and still focus on things which can be clearly delineated as priorities, values, blah, blah, blah. And that if you can get to this point, then yeah. So not just thinker, but intuitive thinker type of thing, where it's like, okay, I don't mind moving these parameters around, moving concepts around, having this top priority, and then let's talk about everything else. But people in general will not do that. They'll want to bring in the tears of their grandma and the this and the that into it and mess everything up and make conflict resolution virtually impossible. But anyways, before I go on and on, Dr. Thunder, what you got to say?
What was the name of number 7 again? The title of number 7.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the big thing. Wait a minute. The big things. What was it?
Yeah, compromise on the big things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
Don't
right.
compromise.
So, yes.
Yeah.
So. It's kind of like don't sweat the small stuff. Sort of what he's saying. Don't allow insignificant things to derail you from, the big picture. The long-term goal. And certainly don't do things in the short term that jeopardize you being able to achieve this long-term goal. It gets you so derailed and off the path that you can't get to where you need to get to. And this is a typical difference between men and women, and this is this is generally true. Is that men will tend to prioritize the long term and will tend to be able to overlook certain short term rumblings or whatever. It seems like women are very much distracted by the short term turmoil, and they have a hard time at times overcoming that. Now, the flip of that is women are better at tend to be a little bit better at being in the moment, enjoying the moment, being in those times when you're together in family, they tend to be better at being fully present in those moments, right? Because the guy might be wired for, his head is thinking 2 weeks down the road or 4 weeks down the road with this big thing that's happening, or could be stress associated with, how's this thing going to come to completion or whatever, right? So there's a balance there that that maybe you can tap into, but in order to be able to take advantage of the sort of the other pole, as it were, you have to like acknowledge what your weakness is there, what you need, where you need the patch, where the holes are,
Hmm.
and the other party also has to do that. The other party also has to say, well, you know what, maybe I am nagging a little bit too much, and maybe I am making something that is uncomfortable right now. Maybe I'm making a bit too big of a deal out of it, whatever. Both parties have to be willing to do that. So anyhow, I just thought that was a interesting parallel there.
Yes, sir. See, there's a focus on people and experience. That's on the one side, people and experience. And then on the other hand, you have things and ideas, right? And the things and ideas focus, it's not a very present type of focus, right? And that'll probably be the male type of thing. They're focusing on their coding, they're focusing on their ideas and their things and their gadgets and their whatever. But meanwhile, there's a side whom values experience, and experience is not experience doesn't get judged or ought, cannot be judged. It'd be a mistake to speak of your balancing, right? If you're the typical idea and things type person, don't make the mistake of judging experience based on some kind of rational stuff. No, experience is just what it is. It's experience, in the moment experience. That's it. Shut up about it. Okay. uh, learn to value it on its own terms. It's not a utilitarian thing. Well, is this experience going to produce more enlightenment for me in the third week of? No, it's here and now, and we're singing Christmas carols and we're drinking eggnog or whatever the hell it is. These experienced people like to do, right? But uh but it is a
Experience, yeah, and experience is a lot like the way that you uh, uh, consume, good art.
there you go.
Is it better if it, is the music better if it gets to the end faster? It's more efficient, so then it's better. No, it's not. That's not the way that you evaluate it. Um, it's by every moment in between, and everything that happens. It's the combination of all of the factors, you know, and often you can't really. It's hard to quantify because it's an experience.
There you go. There you go, indeed. Yes, it is something that I've definitely strived to balance. Beyond the balancing thing, I have a particular knack for focusing on experience because of my whole subjective consciousness kind of way of looking at things. Always wanted to look at things from what are you experiencing right now? But definitely mine is is not about the experience at all. It really is about this kind of control and mastery of your subjective consciousness. That's why I go through the experience route. But I know 100%. I don't fool myself into thinking that I am an experienced type of person that really gets in there and soaks it in. No, I actually don't. Actually, that annoys me a little bit. But I can I've learned to kind of not judge that based on the parameters of things and ideas. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been part one of building that dream team. The dream team is important. Okay. He went through a number of things here. And from what I can loosely remember, it ranges from raising standards and not compromising, not settling. Okay, creating competition. When he mentioned hiring 2 at a time, you need to create competition. You need to understand those who need to, shall we say, grab onto the vision, understand the vision, and are bought into the vision versus those whom are just purely led by money, right? Understanding the balancing of personality versus just skill is also very important in this thing, and everything in between. I think it was a good kind of episode so far, and we'll finish this next week, probably on Dr. Thunder's channel, depending on what you're doing next week, Dr. Thunder. I think you did say yes that this is the end of the semester.
Yeah. Should be it's in the semester, so we should be back to my channel for next week.
There you go. And check out Dr. Thunder. You're doing Two Dads React.
Yeah. Doing a Rolling Thunder in the morning, then a Two Dads React tomorrow night. So yeah, it's gonna be good stuff. Lots of all kinds of stuff going on. I've got a text here. Let's see here. Okay, something about Neil McDonough. Let's see here. Folks getting blacklisted in Hollywood for for saying too much for exposing too much of the NWO. Let's see here. New movie Lady Ballers by FBI over misdemeanor 3 years after the fact. Let's see here. Oh yeah, there's a trans movie that okay, and then okay, and Lil Nas X says he's a Christian now. So yeah, there's a lot.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. We get in there. We get in there, with the with this stuff, We got our tinfoil hats out. We don't wear them on the air. We only wear them, between shows. Only between shows. But we got a tinfoil, hats. We got our spiracy. We got our spiracy on. It's great.
Indeed. Check out Dr. Thunder's weekly show, Two Dads React, for your daily dose of what the Illuminati is up to. Your weekly dose, that is.
Weekly dose, yeah.
Is up to. Every Thursday, I believe. Every Thursday. And check out Case Closed Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Place to be. Highest level conversations. Most relevant topic. Ladies and gentlemen. And shout out to the super chatters again. We have One Man Went to Mo, okay, with some kind of queen money and another queen money with the Canadian dollars. We are getting foreign exchange. Thank you very much. And with that, we're out. Peace.
All right, peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what's a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, we get it. because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.